Quarterbacks, Week 11, DraftKings, FanDuel, Yahoo. What's up, everyone? I'm Chris, your NFL writer here at OccupyFantasy.com. That's what we're going to be talking about today in this video. As always, would appreciate it if you consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, or leaving a comment below if you have any questions about quarterbacks here in Week 11. Pretty small week for bye weeks, just the Broncos and the Rams off in the NFL here in Week 11. No Tampa Bay Buccaneers or Pittsburgh Steelers, I guess, on the slate of the most popular players to consider. No Patriots, no Falcons, no Chargers. That's another one. So a lot of the main quarterbacks that are pretty enticing to roster and use are available to us here in Week 11. I think the first one that I'd like to talk about is Lamar Jackson. I think this is a questionable tag as a result of him missing practice on Wednesday. He was sent home. Doesn't appear like it's a cause for concern. A non-COVID related illness, once again, they're saying for Lamar Jackson. Ravens have a modest 26-point implied team total in this game against the Bears in Week 11. Bears are below average defense against both the rush and the pass, and really that's the biggest thing to consider with Jackson week in and week out. Jackson, the second most expensive, I believe, on this slate behind Josh Allen, who we'll talk about next, but Jackson just $8,000 here, $8,400 over on FanDuel. You know, he's going to give you at least 8+ rushing attempts, as you see here over the last 5 games. That's what he has. A week in and week out, and now facing a Bears defense that will allow him to do those types of things. Have to consider using Jackson in this spot, even though there may be another couple quarterbacks that'll be more popular that play in the late window. The Bears are allowing the most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks for the last 4 weeks of play in the NFL, so that's something that Jackson will look to leverage here in his matchup. Josh Allen facing the Colts as a touchdown favorite here in Week 11. Got back to business last week against the Jets, feeling like we should feel pretty good about that and feel pretty good about his chances to continue that success here against the Indianapolis Colts. The Bills still have above average pass blocking, and this is a below average pass defense. Bills with the second highest implied team total on this slate at 28.7 points roughly, and the Colts are allowing the second most passing touchdowns per game to opposing quarterbacks. That's a problem when they are facing an offense like Josh Allen's Bills offense here, who prefers to throw the football quite heavily. Quarterback that's rejoining our radar here in Week 11, getting prepared to start for the Carolina Panthers in his reunion with his old franchise, is Cam Newton. Cam Newton, I do think, is just a DraftKings only, high floor, cash game, low risk lineup specific play at $5,100 here. He's priced up a little bit more on FanDuel over at $7,500. Matt Rule, Carolina Panthers, saying that they're prepping him to start this week, so we have to be mindful of that and take it under consideration. Cam Newton probably going to be a little more run heavy like we saw with the Patriots last year. His familiarity with some of the players in this offense, Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore specifically, probably gives him a leg up to do pretty well in his first start since the end of the 2020 season with the Patriots. Brand new system for Cam Newton, but this is a guy who's been around the block once or twice and knows what he is doing. The Washington football team is actually allowing the third most passing yards per game to opposing quarterbacks. So if Newton is able to be a little more pass heavy than we last remember from 2020, he'll have the opportunity to have some success here. Getting this far into the video and not talking about what everybody probably expects to hear about, the Dallas Cowboys and the Kansas City Chiefs is the marquee game of the slate. There are 9 games in the 1 p.m. window here in Week 11, 3 games in the 4 p.m. window on the main slates on FanDuel and DraftKings. And this Dallas Cowboys and Kansas City Chiefs game is definitely going to be the most popular, definitely going to feature players that'll be in the majority of DFS lineups most likely between both sides. Patrick Mahomes is the favored quarterback in this matchup and got back to doing what we expect from him last week against the Raiders, throwing for over 400 yards, throwing 5 touchdown passes. Kansas City is the offense with the highest implied team total on this slate, as they are favored by 2.5 points here at home in this 56-point total game according to the odds makers. The interesting thing here is the Dallas Cowboys defense ranks very well. They're a top 5 defense against the pass. There may actually be some value in considering going the other way in this game and playing the Cowboys instead. Not only do the Cowboys have significantly strong pass blocking year to date this season, this is still a Kansas City pass defense that ranks 27th in the league defending the pass. So Dak not going to face much resistance. I think he'll be a lot more competent than Derek Carr was last week against this Chiefs defense. To their credit, the Chiefs have been playing much better pass defense over the last couple of weeks, but now facing Dak Prescott, a completely different task on deck for them. So we'll see what they're able to do against Dak and the Cowboys here in Week 11. There is some appeal to using Dak over Mahomes in terms of how perfect lineups tend to shake out as well. You know, FanDuel perfect lineups from 2020. Shout out to Numberfire and their author, Jim Saunders. They looked at this. The hit rate for slight underdog quarterbacks in high total games was much higher than the frequency at which these players are rostered. So if you look at, you know, Mahomes and Prescott both carrying a ton of ownership here on DraftKings and FanDuel in Week 11, Dak Prescott as the underdog on an offense that may actually be the better team anyway, may be the way to go in tournament lineups here in Week 11. So that's certainly something to consider. Another game stack, and I do think Dallas and Kansas City will be the most popular, so literally playing any other game stack may be some leverage this week. Back at it with the Green Bay Packers in another game stack here after a tough week where we tried to game stack them here at Occupy. They're facing the Vikings for the first time this year. The Packers and the Vikings last year played two games that both were high scoring, 50 points and 77 points respectively. Rodgers playing well in both of those games. Kirk Cousins obviously playing well in both those games to make that happen. This is a quarterback who's now in his second week back from being away from the Packers due to a COVID-19 illness. So hopefully Rodgers has a little bit more time to adjust and get back to normal. He's inside the top 10 by expected points added plus completion percentage over expectation for you stat nerds. So he's still having a pretty good season. Bad game last week. Good spot to bounce back. Minnesota is inside the top 10 in terms of fantasy points per game allowed to opposing quarterbacks over the last 4 weeks of play. So like that for Rodgers. Cousins on the underdog side has to be considered. He's priced pretty reasonably here at 6,100 on DraftKings, 7,400 over on FanDuel. Each of the quarterbacks in this game has a really high touchdown rate on their passes this year, both over 5%. I believe Cousins 5.3, Rodgers at 5.8. I might be Lizdexic on that and have that reversed. That's your homework assignment. You can check that out. Low interception rate, though, for both of these guys means we're probably going to see a situation where both offenses have the ability to move up and down the field and hopefully score some touchdowns. We've been looking forward to that from the Packers for a couple of weeks. Hopefully this big divisional game against the Vikings is when that finally materializes. So who are some other quarterbacks that we can look at that I haven't necessarily talked about just yet? I do think that Kylo Murray, if he is able to go, is going to be intriguing in a divisional matchup against the Seahawks. Starting the injury report week off here on Wednesday, Murray feels good about playing. He's felt good really every single week and has missed. So we'll see what shakes out here. If he goes, he'll be in a good spot against the Seahawks. Ryan Tannehill against the Houston Texans is in a good spot at a reasonable price for a quarterback in both FanDuel, DraftKings, Yahoo as well. So that may be something worth considering. The other game that I'm looking at for a game stack is the Cincinnati Bengals and the Las Vegas Raiders. Obviously, like Derek Carr's chances of going over the 300-yard bonus, my projections here tell me that he has a pretty good chance of that. And Joe Burrow is a little lower on the list here, but like the fact that it's a 50-point total game, both the Bengals and the Raiders allowing the second and third most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks in the season, respectively, over the last 4 weeks. So gotta like that in a high total game environment as well. That, however, is going to do it for this rundown of quarterbacks in the Week 11 slate. Keep an eye out for our daily plug, which will be posted at occupyfantasy.com by Friday afternoon. It's also linked in the description of the video below. That's where we'll go over not just our favorite expensive and value quarterbacks for you to consider, but also our favorite running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. And most importantly, we'll give you the best ways to deploy our favorite players in the slate in both low-risk and high-risk lineups. That's the most important part of the plug. Quite frankly, you don't want to miss that. Please, once again, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel below, like the video if you enjoyed the content here today, and leave a comment if you have a question about any of the quarterbacks I talked about or didn't talk about. You can also consider joining our Discord, where you can talk to other Occupy staff and members about every single NFL slate throughout the rest of the season and the other sports that are going on as well at all times. We'd love to see you in there. Once again, folks, I'm Chris for Occupy. Thank you for watching this video, and we'll talk to you soon.